Hello everybody and welcome to this month's mystery block. This month we'll be making the Double Sawtooth Square. This is a fun one. It has a block in the center and it's surrounded by this echo to make a star within a star. I chose to put this star inside this block, but you don't have to use a star. You could do some fussy cutting and put some cute little fabric in the middle. And I'll demonstrate that to you today as well. There's a lot of options around this block. As I demonstrate this month's technique of flying geese, you're going to see me using a lot of different fabrics. This will be different than what I did last month. I don't have enough of my Christmas fabric to make all the units I need to demonstrate. So you'll see me making quite a few of these in different fabrics. I will always use this wing as red and the field as white. So this unit is called the Flying Geese unit, and this is our new technique that we'll learn this month. Traditional quilt directions will have you cut a rectangle and two squares. You cut the rectangle, you sew one square, you trim one square, you sew another square, you trim another square, and then you have one unit. And as you know, I don't like making one unit at a time. And the tools that I've mentioned will make 4 units at a time. I also want to show you this quilt square that I made so that you can see some flying geese in the wild. In this unit, the flying geese unit is here, 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 and you can see it repeated on the outside border of this block. And instead of making a star, it's making an echoing square. So these quilt designers use these blocks everywhere, and they are foundational to your quilting knowledge. In the introductory email, I suggested 2 different tools to purchase. One was the Creative Grids Ultimate Flying Geese tool, and the other was the Deb Tucker Wing Clipper 1. Both tools have the same directions and are used in the same manner. It does not matter which one you buy. And if you didn't buy one of these tools, that's okay too. I will show you how to use your standard Creative Grids ruler to trim the Flying Geese unit. I don't own the Deb Tucker ruler, but I do like her products. She provides excellent directions, excellent YouTube videos, and has also developed technique sheets for expanding the use of the single tool. It's kind of like buying a multifunctional unit in your kitchen so that we don't have 14,000 things that plug in. And I've provided you a link to her directions for the 4 at a time Flying Goose unit or Flying Geese, because her directions print out at 8.5 by 11, whereas the Creative Grid directions do not. I do own the Creative Grids ruler, so let's look at it and see what information it provides and why Creative Grids made a really good ruler. When I look at the ruler, the first thing I notice is this barcode. This barcode takes you directly to the website and the directions for this ruler. It also prints right onto the ruler the cutting directions for the 2 colors. You have the black and the white. I'm going to refer to the black as the field and the white as the wings. Let's select some fabrics. For my outer white, I'm going to use my background fabric that I bought. This is my holly leaves. For my outer wings, I'm going to use some red. This is directional, and so I'm going to give directions for using directional fabric. For my inner white, I'm going to use this white with the red. It's the opposite of the other fabric. It's also directional. And for my inner wings, I'm going to use black. So I'm going to use this fabric. And for my inner square, I'm going to use this fabric. That's a lot of fabric. So I made us a worksheet, and I'm going to record the color for each of my fabrics. For the inner wings, color was black, red plus white, red plus white. The center square was floral, red, background white, for background white. And I went ahead and put in all of the sizes that were printed right here on the ruler. So our outer block will end up being 3 by 6 finished, and the inner block is 1.5 by 3. When I'm cutting a strip, I don't like the strip to move. That gives me the most accurate cuts. So I want to think about how am I going to cut this without moving it. Now I can put this on 3.5, go and cut it, and put it on 3.5 and cut it over and over again. Or I can use the power of the ruler. And so what I do is I write down my series of numbers to get to 4 cuts. 3 cuts. 3.5 times 2 is 7, plus 3.5 is 10.5, plus 3.5 is 14. So I'm going to go to my 14. This is my 14 line. I'm going to line up that edge. Right? So it's at 14, and I'm reading it. I can see that I've got 1 to 14 right here. I'm going to go ahead and trim that. And then I'm going to move it down to 10.5. That's the next number on my list. And I'm going to cut it. And then my next number is 7, so I'm going to move this down to 7, where I'm getting my numbers from. That's 7. Okay, I'll cut that in a minute. And then my last number is 3.5. Thank you. All right, 3.5. I'm cutting it. Now I have my 4 corner blocks. Off camera, I've cut my white at 7.75, and I've cut my red at 4.25. I cut my strip 17 plus inches, and then I cut it down into 4.25 inch squares. The next part of this is we're going to demonstrate how to lay out the flying geese unit and sew it. There's no using the tool at this point. This is strictly a lay out the squares and sew it. So this is the right side is up, the wrong side is down, so that I'm sewing right sides together. And the directions require that you place these squares in the corners, the diagonal corners of your larger square. So this is my field, these are my wing colors. And Deb, in her directions, suggests that you leave a thread or two on the outside of these squares. And this accounts for that sewing line and the folding line that will eventually happen. Here's another tool that I didn't tell you to buy. This is a Deb Tucker Quilter's Magic Wand. It is a 1/2 inch. It has a line through the middle. And it's useful so that you can line up your middle line on the center and then trace on either side to draw your 2 sewing lines. Most of us don't have that, and so I'm going to repeat what we did kind of last month with the 8 at a time. I'm taking that 1/4 inch line on the edge of my ruler, I'm lining it up from point to point, and I will draw my first line with my Frixian pen, and then I'm lining up the same line, your point to point on this 1/4 inch line, and I'm going to draw a second sewing line. I'm going to go ahead and pin where I sew to keep those squares right where I wanted them to be. And I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and sew it. With the magic of television, I have sewn these two lines, and so I need to cut them apart. I'm going to use my 1/4 inch line, lining up the edge of the ruler from point to point, and that 1/4 inch line is laying on top of my threads. And I cut it in half. And now, this is why this is called the heart method. You have 2 heart units. I'm going to go and press this up just like that. So basically I am pressing to this dark side, but I don't really want to call it the dark side because this could be light, as we saw in my other example. So just press these up with that seam in the back facing up, and press like that. So I've pressed this unit, and I need to add the next square. Remember, we made 2, but we cut out 4 squares. We've used 2 of the squares. So I'm going to put this square right in the middle. I'll demonstrate using the Deb Tucker magic wand. Creative Grids makes something similar, so this again isn't a rare and unfindable tool. There's all kinds of tools that are 1/2 inch with a 1/4 inch center line shown. It is not meant for cutting. Don't use this as a edge for your rotocutter. It's not it's not made out of hard acrylic like the rulers. So I'm going to go and sew on these 2 lines. I'm going to break them apart. I do both. I now have 4 units. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So before we go to trimming, I want to show you really quick about directional fabric, because I saw your fabric. I know some of you have directional fabric. That means that it looks different in one direction than it does in the second direction. So this obviously has a line going in one direction. It doesn't have that same line going in another. So this is a directional fabric. So when working with directional fabric, you want to put your 2 squares onto your background fabric in the same direction. If I had it like this, you could see that the lines are going kind of up and down. If you flip them over, kind of draw with your Frixion, draw a line saying this is the direction of my fabric. Draw that line here so that it's all going in the same direction. Right. When you pop it open and sew it this way, I'm going to sew my 2 lines here. I'm going to cut it. I'm going to cut it along that line and iron that this way. Now all of my lines are going in the same direction. And then it will be the same on the other side. For this guy, my lines are going up and down, all the way across. And we will look at this in a 4 square next. For trimming, we're going to go back to what we wrote on our sheet. This is for the outer block. I need a 3x6 finished. And I go to my square and I see 3x6 finished is F. 3x6 finished is the F unit. When I look at this square here, I see the letter F here, and I follow this white line down to here, and underneath the white line are the numbers 3x6. So I'm going to nudge this F right into the corner, and I'm expecting to see raw edges on the top and on the right side. So I am this white line is following the diagonal line of the unit. So I'm going to trim it in that one direction and the other direction. And now I'm going to turn it and my unit, because I need to cut the next two sides. I'm looking for that F. I'm still working on the F unit. And this is the second cut, and she's got it marked as trim 2. Don't know if I showed you that. That says trim 1 for the first part, and this is trim 2. And I'm making sure I have an F in the middle. It lines up with the white line. My fingers are in the way. It lines up with this white line all the way around. I expect to see raw selvage on this point and this point. And a couple of things that I think are really important is to make sure, as best you can, that the white line on this side and the black line on this side are really in alignment with these points at the far edges. Yeah, that's a bad cut. You want to see these right at the very tip of the corner on both sides. I am not always perfect. You can see I wasn't perfect here. If I had to use a regular ruler, the regular rulers have the 1/4 inch line, and it has this 45-degree line in two directions. So I'm going to do the same thing as what we did with the Flying Goose ruler. We are going to nudge that crisscross right into the corner or into the point, and I'm going to trim. I now know that that line is perfect. I have a good 1/4 inch for my 1/4 inch seam right at the top. So I'm going to flip it over. The next thing I know is that unfinished, so it's going to be 6.5 in the width and 3.5 high. So I'm going to put my ruler, doesn't matter where I put it, except for I'm going to put it on the 3.5 line. And line that all the way up at 3.5, and I can see 1, 2, 3, 3.5. And I'm going to trim it. All right, now half of 6.5 is 3.25. So I am going to take my 3.25 inch line and line it up right here on the top. And this is my 3.25 inch here. There's 1, 2, 3, and that first major tick is 3.25. And I am going to line that up really even on the top. And I can see that I have a good line up on my bottom, I have a good line up on my top. And I'm going to trim that first side. I know that this is a 6.5 inch finish, so I'm going to put it on the 6.5 inch line. I'm going to line it up as best I can, top and bottom. And there you've got it. That is a fully trimmed flying goose unit. Here's another fully trimmed flying goose unit. And you can see one of them goes this way with these kind of spaces going up and down. And this one has the spaces going sideways. So let's look at how we would lay out a unit that has a directional fabric. Alright, so this is, I'm working on my inner square. So here's my inner square fabric. And I need star point and star point. And I'm just grabbing them. I'm just putting them out here. And I now am going to look at the direction of the spaces in this white. This one's going up and down, this one's going sideways, this one's going sideways, this one's going up and down. So let's say we want to move them all to up and down. So just move them around. Right, so I moved all of them so that the space, the white space, is going up and down. And I'm going to continue that with the 4 squares in the corner. Like that. And I will sew those together. This is a 9 patch. It's just a 9 patch again. You've got 1, 2, 3 in the top row, 1, 2, 3 in the middle row, and 1, 2, 3 in the bottom row. And I have given directions for pressing with red arrows. You'll press in the direction of the arrows for each of the rows to get the locking that we did when we did 4 patch, or you can press the seams open. When you're sewing, you need to make sure that this point is hit right by the needle, right at that intersection point. When sewing these units together, we have a lot of points. And by the points, I mean this point, this point, this point, all of these points where you've got seams and you don't want to lose the definition of the V or that point. When we're sewing, we're going to sew, I'm showing you the middle row right here. And I've laid it out, and I'm going to sew this seam and this seam. So I've put my right sides together, and I'm going to sew along this side and this side. And the most important part of this seam comes right here and right here. And I've marked them with my Frixion pen. I know that I can iron this out, but I don't want my needle to go over here or over here. If it's too far to the right of the point, you won't get a nice definition of the V. And if it's too far to the left of the point, you'll have a mushy V. It will have fabric on the other side of it. So we really want to make sure our needle hits right at the intersection of this line and this line that are in the thread. You mark it with a pin, mark it with a pen, whichever you want to mark it with is a good way to just give yourself a good visual for sewing. So I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew these and these all together, and we'll talk about the next step. finished the inner square, and I want to show that I paid attention to the points so that I had very crisp, defined V's, and I paid attention to where the rows came together and the columns came together, so that I had very crisp points at all the corners as well. Let's figure out the layout that we want for the outer border, which also has a directional fabric. So I am laying out what I know are my 4 corners. And I think we'll go opposite. Let's see if we like it. I think I like that. I don't think I want all the lines going up and down. I'm going to change it up a little bit. So this is my final square. I'm going to go sew that together in rows, row 1, row 2, row 3. And I'm going to pay attention to my points here. And when I'm sewing row 1 to row 2, I'm going to pay attention to my point here, and to make sure that this intersection lines up with this intersection as best I can. And I will show you the final square in the next minute or two. Hi everybody, this is a little bonus. I wanted to show you some star blocks that I've made in the past where I didn't have a star within a star. In this example, I have the star block in the center with a white block, and down here you can see that I've got a repeated star right here. It's kind of the rest of the pillow with a 4 patch. And with making 4 patches, I did that all at once, and then I trimmed them down just like we did the first month. And then I just put the points next to it. So that is an example of some flying goose units that make a star with a different center patch other than the star. And this one is one I did where I took some really cute Christmas fabric with animals in it, and I put my ruler so that I could see the center of this animal, and I cut him exactly the way I wanted him to be centered in my square. And then this tiny little square, so I thought, oh, I'll find some fabric and I can border it. And I'll often use checks to bring some fun extra color into the side without having to sew more seams or make a 4 patch or whatever to go around the end. But a tiny little 4 patch all the way around this would be really cute too. So then Larry says that I need to have a tagline. So I'm not very original about this sort of thing. I've been thinking, what can I have for a tagline? Engage. Okay, Larry said no. Goal.
More than just one word.
Okay, no. Okay, so at work, at the end of all of my meetings, I say, go forth and do good work. And so for us, I think I'll say, because I've got to have my Star Trek, go forth and sew. Or maybe go forth and sew good. No. Well, anyway, send in your suggestions for a tagline and we'll come up with something. Make it funny. Thanks.